So I'm so excited you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about strengthening your nonprofit social media presence. If anybody needs to be here, we need to be here, right? Because a lot of us saying we're not posting nearly enough. My name is Aretha Simons. I'm the webinar producer here. Thank you so much, Lisa. For those of you who this is your first time here, I'm gonna let you know how you can engage. There's so many people here, so we would love you put your questions in the Q&A because there's lots of team members behind the scene that can answer your question in the Q&A. I think the chat's going to be pretty full, but I'm sure we're going to be able to grab them from the chat. The main thing I want you to know, the closed caption, if you want to turn that on, just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. You can just read it in all different kinds of language. I love that Zoom upgrade. It's going to be a 2-question survey. We would love to know what you feel about today's survey. And this is going to be recorded and the slides are going to be sent out to you within 48 hours. I'm going to turn this over to Lisa. Lisa, I'm so excited to learn from you today. Have a great webinar.
Thank you so much, Aretha. It's so great to be here. I think this may be my 5th or 6th TechSoup webinar. Each time, everybody is even more and more engaged, and I hope this time is no different. I love seeing where you're from. I love seeing who you're here representing, which nonprofit. I'm just going to say this one more time. We will send you the slides, and this recording will be available after today. So don't worry if you miss anything. Again, as we go through, I'll be able to see your chat. So if I'm asking questions or asking for reactions, please put that in the chat, as well as any questions that you may have. Social media is an interesting beast. Everybody has a different level of experience, back from posting on MySpace, Facebook, 10, 15, 20 years ago, to where we are now, where people are making literally millions per year just with social media. So that is a lot to cover in an hour, but I'm going to try to do my best to answer your questions and go through the strategies that we use at TAP Network. A little bit about me. So I've been in marketing and communications for over 20 years. I'm based out of Baltimore, Maryland. TAP Network is right over the line in Delaware, but we have a workforce that is global, and we serve clients that are all over the world in a variety of different ways. We've been a TechSoup partner for a dozen or so years, providing services like social media services, but also website services, strategy, digital media. And we'll get into all that in the end, but just wanted to say welcome and give you a little bit about me. All right, so what are we going to cover today? We are talking about social media, but I want to put things in perspective. Social media isn't just about posting. It's one of the highest leverage channels that we have today to move people through the donor journey and through your journey as a nonprofit. And what we're going to cover is why it still matters, or why it matters today, how it fits into your nonprofit's day-to-day, your biggest challenges. And I want to hear from you also what you feel your challenges are. Then we're going to walk through a practical system, setting up goals. What is your branding and design, and what does that all look like? Talk about your audience. Many nonprofits, I'm sure you're no different, have a variety of different audiences, from stakeholders to donors to volunteers to the actual audience you're trying to reach. And messaging, why messaging is so important, and how you can use technology and tools to really streamline your messaging and your overall campaigns. And then we're going to wrap with Q&A, but again, feel free to post those questions and I'll try to get them answered as we go along. And I hope that you get something out of this. Again, so if there's something that I haven't addressed, throw it in there and I'll get to it. But that's what we hope to cover today. And thank you for putting in the organizations that you represent. I'm seeing that as we go through. All right, so why is social media, why does it matter, and why is it not an option? It is really central to 2025, and 2026 is going to be no different. Nonprofits in general had over $592 billion in giving in 2024. That was a record high. So we know that people are still, there is an economy, they are giving. But how does social media fit into that, and how can we capture it? Well, 29% of donors say that social media, probably the stories that people are sharing, probably the message, that emotional connection, 29% of donors say that social media inspired them to give. So that's why it's so important today. And nonprofits, you have a leg up. You are outperforming other industries in engagement on social media. And I imagine because of that emotion, because they relate to that, to your nonprofit's mission. So social is where discovery happens, and then it leads to action. I want to hear if anybody has heard of these terms before. I'm going to walk you through very quickly, and we have whole webinars on this on TechSoup's YouTube channel. But the marketing funnel and the flywheel. Just go over it very quickly. And why this is important to social media is to understand the big picture, right? So social media fuels every stage. So awareness. If you think of the shareable videos, the stories, the reels, the campaigns, right? That's what we know about. This is creating awareness, creating a story. We're going to stop the scroll in social media because of your story. So that's at the very top, that awareness. But then in marketing, people move through consideration. This could be testimonials. It could be behind the scenes. Do they trust your organization? Maybe they've heard about it, but they're trying to get some validity or see if you have credibility. Social media is great for that. Then there's that action. You'll hear me say today, CTAs. This is the calls to action, the donate buttons. Social media is changing, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the time, about where you can put that button, where you can put the CTA. The big part and takeaway here is that it's there and you need to find it. And we'll talk about making those calls to action very specific. But your work's not done once you get through the awareness, consideration, action phase. And there's a few more steps to there. And again, check that out if you haven't heard of this. But for others that have, you know that it doesn't stop there. You want to put your donors, your volunteers, your stakeholders into something called a flywheel so that it encourages really ongoing support. I heard there were a few libraries on here, but September is Literacy Month, big month for literacy. October, Health Literacy Month, a couple of our clients here at TAP. So in preparation of that awareness, we're asking our volunteers, our stakeholders for stories, for videos, and we're putting out there. And we know that people who have never heard about our organization or what needs to happen in literacy is going to find out about us through social media. But then we're going to have calls to action that says, dig in more. We have downloadable PDFs. And they're gonna learn more from our website or from the calls to action on social media. And then afterwards, we're gonna do that engage and delight and say thank you to them. We're gonna say thank you on our social medias. Media outlets. We're going to make sure that in emails their pictures are there. And this keeps them in that flywheel so they don't just donate, they don't just volunteer, and they drop off. So as we go through that strategy today, I do want you to keep these high-level processes in mind. Now, as I mentioned, we have several literacy clients. We have hundreds of nonprofit clients and work with the government agencies. Time and time again, I see these 3 to 4 basic challenges come up. One is no strategy or at a minimum, a content calendar. Everyone I saw was posting from 1 time a week to 2 or 3 to, monthly. That is all amazing, but this could be a full-time job. So if there's no strategy behind it and you're not keeping track, it's going to make it much, much harder. So I'll share a little bit later about the tool that we use to organize our content calendar and our strategy. That it's not just coming up with the idea, but it's really doing it on purpose. The data to back it up, 316% Nonprofits with a documented strategy are 316% more likely to succeed than one without it. So if that's not, reason enough, the story, the intuition that we need to document that there's the numbers to back it up. Also, those of you posting daily, shout out to you. Posting daily can boost engagement by 50%. So you can't really do that consistently without a plan. So it goes back to, let's start the foundation and the strategy. Number 2 is inconsistent visuals or branding. It is so important when creating trust and credibility with your organization. I'd love to hear if anyone here had a viral post. There are so many things that go viral, but if you think back, viral posts do not equal clicks. It does not equal translate to donations. It doesn't always translate to action. So creating a strategy, messaging, and also that branding that ties everything in will allow the viewers, when they see something, to relate it back to your organization. And let me tell you, it's pretty cool if you had something go viral, but definitely does not need to happen to have a very successful social media strategy. Another pain point, low engagement. We've all been there, probably more times than not. You put something up and, 1 like from the executive director, 2 likes, 3 likes. It's going to happen, and failure is the way that you succeed. You have to test, and then you have to measure in order to figure out what works and what doesn't work. I really love it. Like, meteorologists can be wrong and social media experts can be wrong, but what we do is that we can go back and get it right, because we're going to follow the data, we're going to see what works, and then we're going to repeat it and grow and grow. Another very important challenge and pain point that I see all the time is being on too many different platforms. Nonprofits come to us and they say, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Threads. Oh, but it's just me. That is very hard to maintain. And also it's hard to measure, and it probably isn't reaching your goals. So we're going to walk through how to choose a platform that's right for your audience and right for your goals, and also give you a little bit of time back. All right, now let's hear from you. What is your biggest social media struggle right now? Is it posting without a plan or calendar? Is it no design help? Everything looks DIY. It's all text heavy. You're just posting to post. Maybe that engagement, it's okay if it's crickets, but we want to try and get people to engage, which will then help your SEO. Juggling too many platforms or overwhelmed and not sure where to start. Yes, thank you. I'm seeing lots of letters, all of them except D. Oh, very good. So as we go through, we're going to address some of these challenges, because you guys are not alone. And each of these challenges has a clear solution if we put the right system in place. All the alphabet, Taylor. I love that. All right, so how do we build a results driven strategy? I love this engagement. Keep it going. Who has heard of SMART goals before? Not a new concept, but when I heard it for the first time, I was like, oh, yes, makes sense. And the other thing about hearing about SMART goals, it's something that we need to be reminded of, because we can get caught up in the day-to-day and we forget, we just need awareness in our entire state, in our entire county. But we don't think about it as it pertains to social media. So here's just a couple examples of thinking about a goal, maybe for this upcoming quarter, and we're not going to pick all 6, right? We're going to pick 1 or 2, and then defining those SMART goals that are best for your organization. Raising donations. We're coming up to a very big donation time, but let's put some specific details around it. Let's make it measurable. We want to make it achievable. Again, I've heard, well, I just want everyone in my state to know about us. I want everyone to know about literacy. But that, while commendable, is not often achievable. So you've got to put that in perspective. Is it relevant? Does it pertain? Okay, I want 1,000 social media followers on Facebook in 3 months. Maybe your audience really isn't on Facebook. Maybe you're trying to talk to a corporate community. Let's make sure that we're looking at those goals to be relevant and then time bound. So just a quick refresher for those who have, it's been a while for SMART goals. So again, a couple of examples, like set numbers. We love it when we work with clients and they're like, we need to get 50 new volunteers by the end of the year. Awesome. Well, this is not only great to measure the work that we did by the end, but to really have checkpoints along the way. And if something's not working, we can adjust in real time so that we hit that goal at the end of the year. This is part of the framework and the strategy that we use. Again, that content calendar. Now that you have your goals, you're going to try and map that out so we're not all last minute, hey, oh, this is cool, I'm going to post. It has a strategy. Mentioned I'd share some of the tools that we use. Airtable, it's like an Excel or Google Sheet, but times 100. It allows you to collaborate with stakeholders for approval. It allows you to put things like who's the audience you're supposed to talk to, attach the visuals. It's an amazing tool. Google Sheets, Excel, it all kind of all works the same. Other tools we use, HubSpot, Hootsuite, there's a couple. Please put what you use in the chat so that others may be able to see what works for you. Batching content. This is what this means is let's not create one post at a time, but let's create 1 month at a time. Not only will you be able to see that you could have different messaging, but maybe you need to repeat things. You know, in marketing, you'll hear that people need to see things 7 times before it sinks in. But if you don't have that content calendar created and you're not putting it up at one time, you may miss that. Another tip that we use is really to repurpose things. Someone writes a newsletter, you write a blog for your organization, repurpose that and make sure that you share it 1 or even 2 times in that content calendar. It's valuable information, and just swapping the way that you word it or maybe the audience that you're speaking to will really help. Canva has been a huge tool. It has leveled the playing field for nonprofits. Is anybody using Canva or something similar to it? Canva also has free. Yes, there are a lot of these platforms that I'll mention that have free and paid versions. It's wonderful for consistency, providing a template. It's okay to go off the templates every once in a while, but the more that you can stick to having that brand awareness, the better. And we have a ton of webinars on AI tools for nonprofits, especially for creating content. There's so many to name, but just make sure that, you know, AI is not going away, and it could really help your social media strategy. Here's again, just a couple of the tools that we use. And it's important to say, once you've mastered or once you try these tools, there's always new versions coming out. So we're constantly learning, and they're getting better, especially as we've mentioned with AI. And say we have content calendar, we're posting, we know our messaging. These tools will help us look at the data on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to make sure that are we achieving those goals? And even going a step further to say, which of my posts have driven donations versus volunteer signups? You could have AI help you spot those patterns and say, create more posts that are engaging donors like this post. So there's just, yes, so many ways that even once you get beyond the basics, like I see many of you are posting on a regular basis to elevate your social media game. Another little poll to participate, but also just think about where you are in the process, but which of these do you actively use to manage social media? I think that, again, one or all of them or none of them, there's not a wrong answer, but it could tell me where the gaps are. Yes. Thank you for chiming in. Creative. All right, we're getting to the fun part, at least for some of us. Creative that connects. It's one thing to have a plan, have a template, but we really need creative that connects. And as I mentioned, not all of your posts need to be perfectly branded, but I just wanted to emphasize that consistent use of colors, of fonts, of logos, it really can't be understated of how it puts your nonprofit out into the world. And the more cohesive branding guide that you have, what you put out there, the more your constituents will recognize what you're putting out there. The other thing is tone of voice. I think that this is a big spot that is not only missed, but needs a conversation of your organization. So we all know that we want a tone of voice that's tied to our mission, that is friendly, but there's also other things that you may want to take into consideration. Plain language, again, I brought up literacy being first and foremost, making sure that your language is tied to the platform. So on LinkedIn, the conversation for a nonprofit or the way that you're writing will definitely be different than TikTok or Instagram. And now we understand that it may not be possible to post a different tone, but on all platforms. That's why it's important to really pick and choose the one or two or three platforms that you have time and you're able to really tailor that content. Because again, you can put it out, but if we're not getting engagement, if we're not resonating with our audience, it's not doing anything to help. I'd love to see any favorite content creators or any favorite nonprofits that you have. If you can think of them, just share them. I think that looking at organizations that have the tone and the messaging and that do it really well, they don't feel like they're speaking to you, they're having a conversation. But I love the National Park Services. Sorry, I had to cut off myself. They're having a conversation. They're making you a part of their experience, I think, is the most important. Authenticity, right? Trying to take a step back and see who your nonprofit is and put that voice out there is really important. Again, for emails, for white papers, for reports, that's a tone and a language that will most likely be very different than social media. But really don't be afraid to have fun. I saw the social media from our trash service over the weekend, and I wanted to share it. And I can share it after this, but the way that the trash service talked about like the do's and don'ts, it just made it so relatable. And I read the entire post. So just making sure, I can't reiterate that enough, that it's matching. Defining your audience for social media. Again, these are all steps that will help set you up for success. Know who you're talking to, because that language that we were just talking about will differ based on who you're talking to. And what motivates them. Get curious. I mean, a volunteer may have different needs, wants, challenges than a funder. and then who may have different needs, challenges, wants, and conversations than a participant. And so again, I know as time is limited, it may be hard, but to separate these out. But with the strategy of the content calendar, of keeping it organized, helping use AI and the data, this really goes such a long way in moving your social media strategy and framework. Talked about focusing on the right platforms. I'll get into a little bit about how TAP could help your organization find the right platform based on your goals. And these examples don't always hold fast and true based on where maybe you have a huge following on Instagram, and that's where your organization gets donors. It's really case by case, but we found that Facebook is a really great way to build a community. There's high engagement on Facebook. People who are involved are sharing to their pages, whereas LinkedIn may be more awareness for the first time and that consideration phase. So all this to say is just make sure that you're picking the right platform for your goal and your audience. Which platform for voters? I think that goes, David, thank you for that question in the chat. That would go into voters. What are they voting on? Is it US voters? Where are they showing up and getting their media? And then what do you have the capacity and the time and the plan to build to generate that content for the voters? I mean, again, TikTok is such a powerful awareness tool, but it takes a lot of time to not only learn, there are whole algorithms with TikTok. Hey, start off with a phrase of who you are, then do a top 10, 7, 3 list, and then end with, I could go on and on about each platform's specific strategy for how you create that content, but I think it's just a matter of taking that and then taking what you have the capability, the time, the resources to do. All right, I'm going to get to a few more of those questions in a little bit, but I think they're really good about, all right, let's define our audience, define our goals, and then define our platform. Another kind of tip or something I wanted to bring up as it relates to social media and as it relates to picking that platform. You may have noticed just doing searches on a regular basis that you go into Google, go into your search engine platform and type out a question. And something that may appear in those top searches would be from LinkedIn, would be from TikTok. So what that means is that social media is now searchable or being indexed, which goes back to that first slide of why is it important for nonprofits to be on social media. AI, and we have a whole webinar on that, September 23rd, is now also indexed. So making sure that your websites and social media the content is there, that AI can pick it up, because no longer you type in something, you type in a question and you get the answer back. You may not get a website. So this all goes into the larger strategy of social media and making sure your content is on message and to the right audience. Another tip that we have as you're thinking about your messaging for your audience, and we have a webinar on this, it is called StoryBrand. Has anyone heard or used of StoryBrand? If you've watched a movie or if you've read a book, you actually have heard of StoryBrand, but you may not know that you have. So any or most movies, books follow this. Follow this framework. One, stop making your organization the hero. Hey, guess what we're doing here? Guess what? We have an event. Please donate. And you flip the switch and make the audience member the hero. So the structure goes, who's the character? The character is your supporter, who you're talking to, the voter, the donor. What is the problem that they need to solve? And who is the guide? So again, if I bring up voting, just because I saw that, the character is the voter. The problem is that there are multiple different viewpoints and where that they can vote, they can cast their vote for a person, for an idea, but your organization is going to guide them to the answer that they need because you have a plan, you have an action item. And there may be, some bumps along the way, some conflict, some problems that they need to resolve. But in the end, your character will get to success. And what does that look like? Once you start, if you've heard of StoryBrand and you start to look at other nonprofit websites, especially the big ones out there, organizations, you're going to see that they follow this StoryBrand throughout their messaging. Another thing that we think about with social media is aligning, and I'm sure many of you had talked about the campaigns that are coming up through the end of the year, but we really love the idea of structuring your efforts and your messaging around a specific campaign, right? So that helps you have SMART goals, that helps you have who you're talking to, and it's a finite amount of time that then you could measure your social media results. So we love that. If anybody has a campaign coming up, we'd love to hear what it is and share some ideas. I know Giving Tuesdays, even though November seems far away, as it's September 2nd now, it's not too far away. Engagement tips that work. We talked about it's okay to have posts, and we will have posts that don't get a lot of engagement, which is shares, it's likes, it's follows, it's clicks to your website. However, we want to set ourselves up for success. So before you send that post off, especially in your content calendar, you want to look through and say, what is the call to action here? And we don't want our calls to action, if we had, let's say, ideally, we're posting every single day. We don't want 30 calls to action. We really want to be saying, what is that goal? And driving to that goal in that campaign, that time frame. So whether or not you're posting quizzes or videos or you're asking questions, make sure that you have that call to action and that it's not just one-off. It's really on purpose. And at the end of the day, and I've said over and over, we can fail, we can have posts that don't work, we can have posts that go viral, but if we're not tracking it, if we're not evaluating it either ourselves or with AI, we won't know whether or not what we did is successful and how to improve. So platforms, even in platforms like Meta, Instagram, TikTok, if you've been on there, we've probably all seen that they provide analytics. Google, it's sometimes overwhelming to look at those analytics and say, I can kind of understand what they mean, but I don't know where to go from here. So these are a few metrics to track. And of course, working with us or working through these slides with your organization, making sure that they make sense to the goals that you're setting. That's first and foremost. Because if your goals are donation within the fourth quarter, we really don't need to know how many followers. Yes, that's awareness, but we've seen organization with a modest amount of followers, a couple thousand followers that have significant donations because they're very engaged. So just make sure that these metrics are aligned with the goals that you're trying to accomplish. But engagement rates, right? I mentioned like, comments, shares, followers. Take a look at the past 4 weeks of content and see which of the posts are getting the most likes and how can we share different information, but make sure that maybe we're using a video, maybe we used a button, and really testing it out and seeing what works. Link click-through rates, that's saying, oh, this one had a high click-through rate. That means they're going from looking to action. We want to be tracking donation conversion rates or volunteer signups. So we were, as I mentioned, working with a literacy group, has a modest following on social media, but through a modest budget on LinkedIn, but consistent calls to action, they're averaging about 10 volunteers a month. So that's going from social to real world impact. Is it better? I'm just going to take a question, pause here a little bit. Emily, is it better to ask people to like and share in our posts? Well, so that's a really great question. And I think it goes back to, if engagement and broad reach is your goal, yes, always asking people to like and share. I think we can also get a little bit creative depending on the post. So say your goal is to get that engagement. What is a different way that you could ask them? Is it by calling out that, hey, volunteers, do you know someone that would be a great volunteer and that you think would like this program? Tag them in it now. So it's, again, going back to your goal and then being a little bit more specific. All right, and I will keep on keeping on, but these are great questions that I will get to in a little bit, so keep them coming. But first, I have another question for you. So talking about goals, if social media worked perfectly for you this year, what would success look like? And this, so I think more than the last poll, is really for what does success look like for me? And if I just had to pick out one, this may tell you what you need to focus on in the upcoming quarter for strategy. I see people picking a couple, and that's okay. I think it's great to plan out goals, but make sure that they're smart and that they're spaced out. And again, all of these are we can accomplish with social media. Quick little picture here of a case study shows social media campaign. As you're just thinking, there's so much more that goes into this. As I mentioned, video, if you post video, it outperforms a static video or a static photo, every time. Depending on if you're on LinkedIn, you might want something that's text heavy or a white paper. So this is just a general, take a step back and say, how are you putting your organization out on social media? And is it something that maybe we need to talk about design first and foremost before we talk about, what our goals are, or they go hand in hand. Make sure that you have your SMART goals, you have your technology set up, but then also when you start to execute that, the images are great, the messaging is great. What images, you won't believe how much time we spend going through images. All right, I'm going to pause here before I walk you through some of our services just to see if there are any questions. All right, first question. I struggle with strategy. Is that something that I should be coming up with on my own or receiving that from admin staff? Can be very challenging with knowing program goals when checking in with program managers. I think that even though this was anonymous, that probably many people on this call really have the same challenge. How do I even come up with a strategy? How do I know where to start? Do I check in with the program managers? Am I the one? And I think this all comes down to, and again, I'm just going to say, you're not alone, understanding where the organization wants to go. What is your most pressing need or want or ask? And if we could prioritize that, then we can start with the strategy. If it's, no one even knows we exist, so I can't even worry about donations or volunteers because I need to generate awareness. You start with that goal and create a strategy around it with smart goals. Okay, we're going to work on this for 2 months with consistent. We know who our audience is for awareness. We want to raise awareness with stakeholders who could be people, funders, or with people who are on our board. Again, defining that will help you come up with the strategy. And it is very important to have buy-in from everyone. And also buy-in on which platform, because your biggest supporters are going to be the people who are sharing. And if your team and program managers aren't on the same page, then they're not going to get behind it, and they're not going to share it. So I hope that helps. Is it possible, from Beth, is it possible to maintain social media, Facebook and Instagram, plan, post, follow up in only an hour or 2 a week? I think that yes. Now, maybe it is not possible if you have not set, it's not possible to do it successfully if you have not set yourself up for success. So when we work with clients, and you'll see a little bit here right on the screen, we always propose doing an audit of what's worked, if you've done anything at all, what doesn't work, and come up with that strategy that I just talked about for 30 seconds, just based on one question. But we want to make sure that strategy is solid and that we have a plan. Then once we have that, maintaining on 2 social platforms, knowing your audience, knowing your messaging and your goal, yes, for sure possible. Another question. Would you mind sharing some ideas of using consistent colors, fonts, logos, and making a post more creative? I usually just post a photo with a caption. Hey, posting is better than not posting at all, right? And that could be your step 1. Creating a brand guide. And what a brand guide is deciding upfront how you're going to use your logos, how you're going to use your colors. What are those colors? So a pink, I mean, gosh, we've looked at a rainbow wheel, right? If anybody's tried to choose paint for their walls, there's a million different pinks out there. Let's decide what are our main colors, what are our main fonts, and then we're going to make sure that the organization and the companies that we work with are using those as well. As far as creating videos, oh my gosh, we're going to probably do another webinar just on using AI, Midjourney. There's specific video that AI services that are out there that can help you. Once you have your idea, you put the text in and it can create the video, the photo that you're talking about. So all of these things are really, all these tools and technologies are making the playing field level for nonprofits, people with tight resources, to really do more and be very creative. All right. What is the first step in defining our audience? I like to think of this as doing a little bit of investigative journalism work. Once you define once you think about who is your audience now, who are the people that are showing up to our events, who's on my mailing list, what are their characteristics and demographics that I can see across the people on our current list. We create things called personas. So personas are, okay, these are 3 people that are representative of our audience. What would be an example of where they work? Where do they live? Where do they shop? What do they read? What do they watch? Once you can get a picture, again, think about what platforms they're on. And you can find a lot of this information just online once you start to ask these questions. There's amazing white papers and studies about where you can find these groups. But the more you know and the more you can get down on paper of who your audience is, the better that you'll be able to create that messaging. So for example, if we are talking about parents of elementary school children who may have a learning difference or disability, I'm going to say, and I'm providing a tutoring service, I'm going to say they're probably coming from 30 minutes, if I'm in person. If I'm virtual, this could be different. 30 minutes from my location. So this is where I am. We know their general age, or that they have a student in elementary school. What are they reading? What kind of blogs are they on? What is the way they like to be talk to? What are the words that, and how do they speak? We know different generations use different words. Making sure that you're using that language back to them goes a long way into helping define your messaging. But again, another tip about that is just to look up personas and start to build out the personas for your nonprofit will help you build an audience. Let's see. And I have my team here. If you see any questions that you want to call out, feel free.
Hey, Lisa, I'll jump in for a second real quick. I just am monitoring chat and everything. So I'm Jason with Tap Network as well. I talk to most of the nonprofits that come in through TechSoup looking for help. A lot of times when I look at these discussions, I kind of break them down into three key areas that Lisa's touched on. One is strategy, which talks about content calendars and how are we posting it, personas, who are we speaking to, how are we saying it. So there's strategy, infrastructure, and implementation. So for a lot of people, they normally need help in one or two areas, not always all three. When if it is all three, they normally don't have a budget to support all of them. So it's all right. Do we have the strategy in place of who we're speaking to and maybe where they roughly reside? Infrastructure wise comes down to like platform setup, template creation. I know a lot of what is on the slide right now kind of breaks this down in some ways. So it's, do you know who you're speaking to and the messaging you should be sending? The next piece is, do you have kind of those infrastructure pieces in place where you can reasonably post maybe once a day, once a week, and it's not taking too much time off your plate? And then the last part, implementation, is the part where it's, do you have someone to do it? A lot of people, or a lot of the nonprofits I end up speaking to, if they have the first two in place, they normally can find someone to do the work, but they don't know where to start, or they need help in one of those key areas. So I think a lot of when it comes to when it comes to these discussions, a lot of people are trying to figure out where they can really make that difference. And I think a lot of it's all about having the right message in the right place. So it's the same across, but if I know all of my target audience is only on Instagram, then I need to be focusing on Instagram. But is that just donors that are on Instagram, or is it just the volunteers? Maybe it's just the volunteers. And then maybe on LinkedIn, that might be my major target donor, audience. That's where I could cater my message and make it a little different. But I see a lot of nonprofits try to over, customize, and they try to create all these different Instagram handles, all these things, and it just becomes unwieldy and super hard to manage. So my recommendation is always to keep it simple, but make sure that you are constantly refining, you are tracking your SMART goals, to Lisa's point, so that you can see where do you have opportunity to really grow, or what you should never do again, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jason, for organizing that. That's super smart to think of it in those buckets. Just gonna try and answer a few more questions. Somebody was talking about boosting post, adding followers, or everyone, just like different tips. And I think the summary point is test to see what works in a small sample set. So I think boosting posts are excellent. I think spending a nominal amount to get your content out there so you could get eyeballs on it, 25, $50 a week. But if you do that, you have to look at it to make sure it's working or not working to be able to adjust. Because just to put it out there, someone said, we made a video and we put it on there and it fell flat. What happened? Yes, it could have been too long. It could have been there's so many things that could have happened. So I think it is just try and try again, and not to give up, and don't feel like, oh, well, we posted it once, we can't post it again. There's so many tools out there that can remix content, and we could talk about that if you decide to engage with our services about a strategy. We have a ton of content. It didn't work, but we think it's great content. All right, let's take that next step into repurposing your content. And before we wrap up with another question, since I have Jason here, we talked a little bit about our social media packages if you want to get started with us. If you're finding, and like many other nonprofit organizations, that yes, social media is a challenge and we'd like to address that, but we're sending everybody to a website, or we have an email newsletter that's falling flat. There are other ways to engage with us in a budget-friendly way on a monthly basis that you would have access to a multitude of different experts for a monthly fee. I saw someone post about, we need help with, design. Well, here you have access, to a designer to create templates. Here you have access to strategy. So we know nonprofits. We want to get to know you and what your goals are, and then come up with that plan. So anything else to add there, Jason?
Not much. I think a lot of the questions I'm reading through just at a high level, it's schedule time with me if you would like to discuss individually, because while we can give high level answers, there's a lot of, well, it depends on what you're trying to do. Because while we're all in the nonprofit world, how we work and how we do it does vary wildly. And so it's hard to always give best recommendations at a broad or without just being broad. So I'm happy to meet with you. Yes, I've had thousands of these conversations with many people like yourself, many of your colleagues, and happy to provide more guidance, whether that's us just giving you a couple minutes of ideas, or if it's trying to really build out an area where we could become a larger portion of your team through like one of these monthly retainers that we offer, or through one-off custom projects. There's a lot of ways we can be helpful, and happy to help. How do you schedule time with me, Adam? I just saw it come up. If you scroll up, I did post that link right above, like 2 messages above. Feel free to jump right on in the chat. Sorry, I posted it in chat. And this will be sent out to you. You can use the contact us form to book time on my calendar as well through TechSoup. Both work. Happy to meet with you guys. I know this is first and foremost a very popular time to start doing this, because we're coming up to what I call handout season or donation season. Q4 is a huge push for donations for most nonprofits. So definitely get your ducks in a row now, get a content calendar in place, and make sure you're ready so that at the end of this year, you can track what worked and what didn't. And then retool and redo it next year.
Yep,
Anything else in
awesome.
the review?
Jason, sorry, I thought someone else was talking. Okay. I would love to get to all of the questions, and I will get a copy of this and try to get to as many as I can, and reach out to you. They are a lot of the, relates to your specific organization, so we can help with that. I think I'm just going to go through a few more that hopefully is helpful. Should eBlast Constant Contact factor into our social media calendar? Absolutely. We know redundancy is wonderful when it comes to any sort of communication. This goes back to design. We could help you design a email blast, not only the template, but maybe a specific giving campaign. We talked about those campaigns, and then a social media campaign, videos that tie back to it. Again, when you have that one goal, that one SMART goal, if you can tie your email and your social media into it, you will see those results improve over just piecemealing it.
I see Michelle asked, should your SMART goals be the same or different than other marketing or advertising channels? I would say, Michelle, typically when we have a goal, your message or your story, as Lisa talked to, should be very similar across all channels. The channel is simply the messaging medium, or let's say the messaging vehicle in which you are reaching out to that target audience. So overall, I think all of it should ladder up to a very similar messaging, but it might be specific to who's engaging in that area. So if it's a donor area, if it's an, place where you're just speaking to volunteers only, if it's somewhere where you're trying to create community engagement and bolster an idea or a topic or create awareness, that's going to vary from like place to place, but it should all ladder up to that same core goal for your nonprofit.
Yep, that's awesome, Jason. And that actually ties into Adam's question, where he was talking about reels or short form video content, or really any of your content. He said, if the goal is to get their attention, and then they click through to your page to learn more about you, is that the goal? And I would just recommend taking a step back, because whatever you're creating, that short form video should actually be the goal in itself. So if it is, and then if it is creating new volunteers, right? You want to direct them to the page where they can sign up to be a volunteer. So you don't want to just create a video for attention, but it's with a purpose in mind. So I hope that helps. But then yes, if you click through, you're getting engagement. You got them to stop and pay attention. You want to make sure that they don't have to work so hard to get to that information that they're trying to get. So again, a different example, or the inverse of that, would be, you show an emotionally moving story, and then someone clicks on it, but it doesn't take them to the donation page. It takes them to their homepage, and they're like, well, now what do I do? So you really want to think through that whole user journey, and then tailor your message and your call to actions around the goal you're trying to achieve. Any other questions that you see, Jason, that are
I
standing
see
out?
another one that I find interesting. Carissa Muniz, hopefully I didn't butcher that. She's talking about how, now I'll click answer live, so you can see how her organization's social media tend to include the people for their services who they assist with, and not like donors or funders, etc. Any ideas how we could reach the possible donors or supporters? It really depends on who you're targeting with a lot of those posts. And also, do you have a dedicated or very easy way to get assistance for how you're helping? Because if there's not an easy, or an easy to identify method for me to go, I need help and see where I go, I'm going to start just flailing and try to find ways to get that support if it's not just like really spelled out. So I know a lot of messaging, especially when we focus on websites, we say keep it at a fifth grade reading level, make sure it's easy to understand. It's not a play on words, so that people can easily identify where to go to get the help they need. That might help reduce some of that influx in that area. Um, it also might not be the best place for your donors. Just depends.
Yep, absolutely. I know there's a difference between wanting people to be on your platform and take action, and then what they actually do. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. It's like, well, maybe it's actually, email that is resonating, but we've been trying so hard at social media. That's why that data, figuring out what you need to track, what are those stats, and then how to improve them, is really so important. And Daniel's hitting the nail on the head. How do you track effectiveness of your campaign? I think if you know the goal, and you create those SMART goals, you'll know if your campaign is working, if people are engaging, if people are donating, and not to switch up those goals too often, because remember, failure is a good thing if you learn from it and adapt. So I really appreciate everyone's questions. I will try to get to all of them either offline. Feel free to contact Jason when we send this out, or it's up above in the chat. Anything else you want to add, Jason?
We're good. It was a pleasure.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all for being such an active and participating audience, and see you next time.